Wall Street ends the session higher, recovering two-thirds of Friday's losses. S&P 500 and Dow Jones end with gains of over 1%. Markets in Asia open mixed as investors assess the latest rift between US and China. The GIFT Nifty is indicating a flat start for the Indian markets. Gold hits a fresh all-time high at $4,100 an ounce on the back of trade jitters. Silver also set a new record above $52.50 an ounce. Crude oil prices rebound from a 5-month low as hopes of easing US-China trade tensions lift sentiment. HCL Tech beats estimates in Q2 FY26. Company maintains growth outlook at 3 to 5%. Also becomes the first Indian IT service company to report standalone AI revenue. Company says advanced AI revenue exceeds $100 million this quarter. Also watch out for numbers from Tech Mahindra today. Our CNBC TV 18 poll sees the dollar revenue rising 1% on a quarterly basis. Retail inflation eases to 1.5% in September, touches an over 8-year low, comes below the RBI inflation range of 2 to 6%. The food basket slips further into deflation territory. LG Electronics India will list on the stock exchanges today after a bumper subscription to its initial public offering. Now, it was the most bid IPO after receiving bids worth nearly 4.5 lakh crore rupees. Hello, good morning. You've tuned into CNBC TV 18. You're watching Power Breakfast with me, Vinny Motiwala. Yesterday, surely we saw a muted day coming in. But what's the indication today from the Asian markets? That's what we'll start the show with. Because Asian markets have opened up a bit mixed, right? When you're looking at it in terms of Hang Seng, that's managing to hold on to gains of 0.4%. Taiwan Index managing to hold on to gains of 1.83% as well. But we have ASX 200. That's very muted in today's trading session. So keep an eye out on that. We have Nikkei, that is also trading with cuts of 0.7%. So a muted start is what we're watching from the Australian index as well as the Japanese index. But on the flip side, you have Hang Seng Taiwan, which are managing to hold on to gains. Now let's pull up the Nifty implied open. What is that indicating? That's indicating a flat start for our market. So not much of a worry actually coming in terms of a further decline. Just 4 points decline right now is what the Nifty implied open is indicating. So very, very flat start. Let's keep an eye out on that. But yes, that's the indication right now from the Asian markets front. But how are these other over global night cues going to be impacting our market? What are the important stocks that you should be keeping on your radar? The FNO story that we're watching out for today. We have a team of research joining in with us. So before I go to Gaurav as well as Sudarshan, let me start you all up with the trade setup for today. US markets, what did we see there? Wall Street, that's our rally. And this is coming in after that fall that we saw on Friday. Wall Street managed to see most of the recovery coming in from that losses that we saw on Friday. Dow actually snaps its 5-day losing streak as well. So that is something that we'll watch out for in terms of positive cue coming in from the US markets. And this all came in after those Trump's dialogue that came in terms of China being, not bad in terms with the trade war over there, or they'll be fine. So that is the commentary that came in. We spoke about this yesterday as well. Now let's talk about what FIIs did. Now in yesterday's trading session, FIIs actually turned sellers, and there were sellers of around 240 crores. This is after buying for four trading sessions. They turned sellers. The DIIs were buyers in yesterday's trading session. So let's keep an eye out on this FII story. Listings that we're watching out for, the big listing coming in today, obviously LG Electronics, that's what everyone is watching out for today. How is that actually going to be shaping up will be something that we'll keep an eye out on. Today we have the important cues coming in terms of WPI data, so watch out for that. Yesterday we had the CPI data came in post-market hours, that came in at 1.54%. So that is interesting to watch out for in terms of the numbers. CNBC TV 18 poll was at 1.54%. And now the poll was at 1.5%. So keep an eye out on CPI inflation data, reaction in the market on that. Star Cement fundraising plans are there. We have earnings reaction to HCL Tech, Anand Rathi Wealth, as well as Just Dial. And earnings reporting today, Persistent System, Tech Mahindra are the important ones on the IT pack. Then we have ICICI Lombard General Insurance, ICICI Prudential Life Insurance, signed DLM, IREDA, as well as Bank of Maharashtra, which will also report their numbers. Nifty, Yesterday, very good recovery that we saw coming in the later half of the day. So keep an eye out on that. Closed just about the 25,200 level. So it will be interesting to watch out for there. An implied open. Just a 4-point decline that we saw coming in, right? So not much of a worry there. But let's move on and talk about important stocks that you all should be keeping on your radar. Let's go across to Gaurav for that. Good morning, Gaurav.
Well, yes. First, let's talk about landmark cars because for the Q2, company said that the total revenue is up almost by 30% and vehicle sales, that is up almost by 35%. So good set of number here. Anand Rathi came up with in-line set of number, we could say, because net profit that increased almost by 30%, while revenue increased almost by 22% on a year-on-year basis. HCL Tech, when we look at net profit, that increased almost by 10% on a year-on-year basis. And at the same time, EBIT margin that came in at around 17.25% versus our own poll of 17.1%. So definitely we saw the number which was better than estimated. Other than that, let's also watch out for Lodha Developers because company has acquired 100% stake in Chaitanya Bilwa for 500 crores, and with this they also acquired around 8.4 acres of land in Bangalore. KC International, this company won an order worth 1100 crores and this is in the T&D business. And lastly, let's also focus on Oil India, because company has signed a long-term agreement with NIPCO to continue gas supply to power plant in Assam. Let's also not forget about RBL Bank and IDBI. Both the banks are going to be in focus, and the reason being that as per media reports, Emirates MBD is in advanced talk to acquire majority stake which will be around 51% in RBL Bank. This is important for IDBI as well because this name was also revolving around as a front runner in the IDBI deal. So definitely watching out on both these stocks and let's see how they react in the market today.
Absolutely. Will be important to watch out for these stocks in today's trading session. But what are we watching out for in terms of cues in the world of F&O? We have Sudarshan joining in with us. Sudarshan, what are we expecting today over there? 25,200. What are the levels that we should keep an eye out on?
Good morning, Vinny. So yesterday it was not a bad day of trade and we saw a huge recovery from day's low because tracking the global cues because US futures were also trading higher. But now the key question is, will we hold on to these higher levels and move higher from here also? So now it all depends on the IT names because HCL Tech has come out with earnings and those earnings looked much better than expectations. But on the negative side, FIs have turned net sellers again, both on the cash market as well as in the derivative market. Again, they have added more short positions than long positions. Now, as far as GIFT Nifty goes, it's indicating a flat start, but we'll have to see how the majorly IT stocks behave after HCL Tech earnings. Now, FI's long exposure again remains around 7%. As far as the options data goes, on the call side, 25,200, 25,250, 25,400, all these options have seen a huge increase in the open interest, but at the same time, premium for all these options have seen a huge fall. But in the contrary, put options 25,200, 25,100 as well as 25,300 have seen an increase in the premium. So on the downside, support for Nifty remains around 25,150 to 25,200. On the upside, first resistance would be around 25,330 because it's the recent high also. And if we manage to cross that, next resistance comes around 25,450. As far as Nifty Bank goes, support would be around 56,200 and resistance would be 57,000. Nifty Bank has to cross 57,000 to see a huge buying. Two stocks remain in the bank, RBL Bank and Sammaan Capital. Some of the stocks have seen huge or fresh buying or say short covering, and majorly Hero MotoCorp from the Autopipe was higher almost 2% yesterday on the back of fresh buying, and L&T Fin ahead of its Q2 earnings is seeing a fresh buying as well.
Okay, Sudarshan, thank you so much for that. We'll keep an eye out on those stocks in the world of F&O. But we had HCL Tech that reported their numbers post-market hours. What were the numbers looking like this time? AI revenue, that's coming as well, Reema. So that is something exciting now we're watching out for. But over to Reema to give us more details on that front. Reema, good morning.
Hi, good morning. So let's first start with the numbers. Revenue and margins for HCL Tech have come in better than expectations. The company's top line has gone up by 2.4% on a quarter-on-quarter basis. This versus expectations of a 1.5% increase, and it comes in on the back of two consecutive quarters where the revenue had declined. EBIT margins for the company have also expanded by 110 basis points at 17.4%, again ahead of estimates of 17.1%. The deal wins have also been strong. If you remember, last quarter, deal wins were subdued, and the company had said that there were two large deal wins which got deferred into Q2. which is why this quarter's number is looking good at $2.5 billion. But in the press conference, the company also said Q3 deal wins will also be very strong. Now, on the overall FY26 guidance, the overall revenue guidance remains unchanged at 3 to 5%. But now the company breaks up this revenue into services and products. And on services, they've tightened the band. So now they're saying that it will be 4 to 5% versus their earlier 3 to 5%. Margin guidance for the full year remains unchanged at 17 to 18%. But you know what's also very interesting, as you pointed out, is that there is, a quantification of the AI revenue. And this is not standard AI because AI is applied everywhere. They're talking about advanced AI, data analytics. And HCL Tech has become the first Indian IT companies to report standalone advanced AI revenue. And this quarter, the company says it stands at $100 million. So just the fact that it's now become mature enough for it to warrant a separate reporting line, that AI is now moving from pilot to project state, and that the Indian companies are also quantifying it, I think is a healthy sign in terms of overall disclosures and where AI is in the overall, AI revenue, where AI has reached. And Accenture already used to do that. But now HCL becomes the first Indian, headquartered services company to do that.
Okay, Reema, thank you so much for that. We're going to be surely watching out for other IT companies that will be reporting their numbers today, but HCL Tech, that's the one we should keep an eye out on as well today. On that note, let's step into a very short break. We'll get you more updates from the Gaza Peace Summit after this break. Welcome back to Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Now on to the big international story we are tracking today. All living Israeli hostages in Gaza have been released by Hamas and are back in Israel after 2 years of war. A group of 13 hostages were escorted across the border by the Israeli military after a group of 7 hostages was released earlier. Now, US President Donald Trump declared that the war in West Asia was over before his trip to the region to finalize a peace deal for Gaza. The president reached Israel ahead of the summit in Egypt as the hostages were released. He was welcomed by the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu before heading to Israel's parliament, and the Israeli president, however, skipped the US president's invitation to Gaza Peace Summit in Egypt, with his office stating that the summit was held too close to the start of the Jewish holiday. US President Trump also said that rebuilding work in Gaza begins now and says that humanitarian aid is starting to pour in. Listen in.
After years of suffering and bloodshed, the war in Gaza is over. Humanitarian aid is now pouring in, including hundreds of truckloads of food, medical equipment, and other supplies, much of it paid for by people in this room. A new and beautiful day is rising, and now the rebuilding begins. The rebuilding is maybe going to be the easiest part. I think we've done a lot of the hardest part because the rest comes together. We all know how to rebuild, and we know how to build better than anybody in the world.
Now, let's shift focus on the U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says that U.S. President Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping will meet later this month, as that there was substantial communication between the two sides over the weekend, and more meetings were expected soon as well. Listen in.
The Chinese economy is doing very poorly, and maybe they're trying to take focus off of that. Two, China, as opposed to the United States is pushing for peace in the world. China is financing war. China purchases of Russian oil is financing the Russian war machine. They purchase Iranian oil, and we have been calling them out on that. So maybe it was to distract from that. And three, maybe it was a mistaken attempt to try to gain leverage before the two leaders meet in Korea in October. And I can tell you, trying to get leverage in front of a meeting with Donald Trump is a bad idea.
Now, let's also talk about the U.S. market, right? Major indices ended with significant gains, staging a rebound from Friday's sell-off. And this came in after President Donald Trump says that the trade relations with China will all be fine. CNBC's Mackenzie Sigalos gets us more details on that front.
U.S. markets were up big across the major indexes in Monday trading after President Trump seemed to soften his stance over the weekend of instituting a, quote, massive increase in tariffs on China. The Dow gained 588, the S&P 500 was up 102, and then that tech-heavy Nasdaq added 490 points. JP Morgan Chase announced Monday it is launching a 10-year plan to support industries that it calls crucial to U.S. national security. The bank says it will invest up to $10 billion into companies in several sectors: defense and aerospace, AI and quantum computing, energy technology and supply chain, and advanced manufacturing. JP Morgan said it is part of a broader effort to finance or facilitate $1.5 trillion in funding for companies that it identifies as crucial. And OpenAI announced a partnership with Broadcom to build its first in-house artificial intelligence processors. The companies didn't share the financial terms of the deal today, but said Broadcom will develop and deploy racks of chips designed by OpenAI starting late next year. It is the latest in a string of deals in recent weeks by OpenAI, as it also announced partnerships with NVIDIA, Oracle, and AMD as it ramps up the computational power and capital needed to build out its AI plans. Broadcom shares were up 10% on the news.
Thank you so much for that. Now, let's move on. And meanwhile, the former National Economic Council Director, Lael Brainard, says that China overplayed its hand in the rare earth magnets issue, but expects both sides to get back to the negotiating table. Listen to what he had to say.
I think China really overplayed their hand here, coming out just before the two presidents were planning to meet after a long negotiation and really threatening very substantial escalation of their cutoff of rare earths, which are so important to autos in the U.S., to the defense industry in the U.S. My sense is both sides are going to find a way to climb down and get back to the negotiating table. But it is ironic that China is the source of most of the problems that America has experienced with trade. And yet, because they are so powerful in certain areas that we are dependent on, they may end up with lower tariffs than countries like Switzerland.
On that note, we're going to slip into a very short break. Don't go anywhere. Up next, we'll get to what's happening in the world of commodities. Stay tuned in. Welcome back to Power Breakfast on CNBC TV 18. Now, the big macro data point that came in post-market hours yesterday was that retail inflation drops to 1.54%. This is in the month of September 2025 from 2.07% in August. The reading came slightly above the CNBC TV 18's poll of 1.5%. This marks the lowest inflation level since June 2017. The moderation in inflation mainly was driven by continued weakness in food prices, with food inflation remaining negative for the fourth straight month. So important data points on the macro front that we're keeping an eye out on. But commodities, that continues to be in focus as well. What is happening there? What are we watching out for in today's day? Manisha Gupta is joining in with us this morning, as always. Good morning, Manisha.
Morning, Vinny, and absolutely there is no stopping when you look at gold and silver prices. Every day when you think there could be a bit of a consolidation or even some healthy correction, well, no, every slight decline, even a couple of dollars is getting bought into and even more. So when you look at the gold prices, well, we are up by 58% in this year. We've seen 2.5% of gains overnight. And with that, it's a new record high for gold at around $4,150 an ounce. I mean, remember, I just keep saying that we started this year with $26.50. We are trading at $41.50 right now. So huge gains coming in for that. Silver not too far behind because we're looking at 4% of gains overnight onto this one. And with this, we are nearly at $53 an ounce for the silver prices. Also, it's another all-time high for the Indian markets as well as it will open. After gold and silver, it is platinum. We've seen 4% of gains in that. Copper gained up by 6% overnight. Baltic Dry Exchange Index was up 10.5% in the overnight markets. Well, it has to do with the U.S. and China trade tensions. Markets anticipating another 25 basis point of a rate cut in this month. And then apart from that, it also has to do with the tariff concerns across the world. So all of these factors bringing the money into tangible commodities, as you can see.
Yes, absolutely, Manisha. Thank you so much for the update there. So there's no stopping right now in terms of a up move for gold or silver continues to glitter in the trading day every day. But with that, we are absolutely out of time on this edition of Power Breakfast, leaving the Nifty with a very muted start that is indicated for the Indian markets. A 1-point decline is what we're seeing right now, 1 to 2 points. So keep an eye out on that. Don't go anywhere. Up next, your Bazaar Morning Call to take you through all the action that will be happening in the market.